What do you call a Frenchman wearing flip-flops? Is there such a thing as a vegetable double act?
I don't know.
Philippe Philop.
We walk out into the Priory cloister, which was...
Now, I genuinely don't get this one. My pirate friend turned 80 the other day.
We don't have to talk about these things.
The other day we were discussing vegetables, and he said, "Aye, matey. Aye, matey."
Aye, matey.
Oh.
How can you not?
So I mean, as I'm sort of looking, what was that?
That candle. Yeah.
Mr. Carrot was going into the roof to look for leeks, and there was a load of leek people up there.
So I said, parsnip and leeks are not your typical vegetable double act.
Yes.
He didn't catch me at, unawares this time.
No, of course not. Of course not. We don't like to do that with the elderly. No, sorry, that's terrible. Look. In the last 2 weeks,
Yes,
I've grown a year older.
you have, that's true.
So, I've been getting a lot of the old jokes. Even...
That was a bit much though, wasn't it?
It was,
a bit much to start the podcast
I take it all back.
in that vein.
I take it all back. But I've even been getting... Well, it wasn't ageist jokes, but... So, we've had a really wonderful 2 weeks.
It's not been very good, actually.
And it's all my fault.
It is all yours.
It's always my fault.
It's always your fault. It's always his fault.
It's just not on.
No, that's true.
I honestly think that if this 2 weeks hadn't fallen 6 weeks after, I've just had a load of follow-up after the big operation I had last year. And you only hear something if it's bad news.
Yeah.
Which is really tough. Because we've got bad news months
Yeah, we have.
after.
When you think everything's fine because you've not heard anything.
So you're constantly like this.
You are constantly like that, yeah.
And when you throw into that mix me being in pain.
Oh, honestly.
Look, what do you mean honestly? You're going to try and imply now that I wasn't in pain?
No, I know you were in pain.
The whole reason as to why I got ageist comments from a nurse was because I just happened to twist my neck a couple of weeks ago. I was just twisted my neck, and I did something to my back which then swelled up and pushed on a disc, which then it made me start to get really bad pain in my arm, which is still there a little bit, but thankfully it's virtually gone. And that sent me on a bit of a downward spiral.
Yeah, we kind of, when you pull your shoulder, when you've got like a massive crick in your neck, that sort of thing. It was that kind of pain, wasn't it? But then you were getting this pain down your arm, and it was his left arm. So you do instantly sort of worry, don't you, that it's connected to your heart. And I think you went about a week, didn't you? Maybe not even a week. Might have been about 5 days. And I said, look, you've just got to go to the doctor. And you actually saw a nurse practitioner, didn't you?
Yes, she was very good.
So Cody, if you're watching Cody, he saw the equivalent...
Off the Cody Bits podcast, in case you're wondering who Cody is.
Cody's a nurse practitioner. I didn't actually think that they existed in this country, if I'm honest.
She was a nurse practitioner, so she could write prescriptions.
She can write prescriptions, which the other sort of nurse can't.
Well, I
don't think anyway.
Well, no, I don't think so. No. So anyway, she gave me a good inspection, and was really swift actually in prescribing what the issue was. And the reason why I went was because I was fine initially, just getting on with it. Like Kay, and I think this is the point of what we're talking about. Like Kay, your brain starts to mull things over, and I know that the type of chemo that I had, it can cause damage to your heart. And so I started thinking, is this something to do with the chemo? It's crazy, isn't it, how your brain works? When it's obvious. I've been sat at my desk, twist my neck, ow, pain. It's obvious how it's all linked.
When you did it.
Yeah, it's obvious how it's all linked. But, that time to ponder and think, you start to convince yourself, hold on a minute, what if it's something else? And especially, as I say, when you combine into the fact that I'd had that test. But is the crux of it, though, that if I get under the weather, it reminds you of before?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's horrible. I've hated the last couple of weeks, to be honest, because it's just horrible, you know. And I think when you've got a cold or something like that, it's fine, isn't it? It's a pain, but you know it's just a cold. But I think when it's something a bit unusual, then it just sort of triggers those thoughts in your head. And I actually said to Dan, do you know what? I honestly thought that I was getting past these kinds of worries.
Yeah.
I honestly thought I was, but then...
Those worries being about me being ill.
Yeah, about him, you know, getting ill again. Do you know what? I don't think it ever goes away. I think if, you know, for a while it might relax in itself and you might think everything's okay. But then something like this just suddenly makes you, you know, sit upright and you're like, oh gosh, you know, and what if, and what if, and what if, and oh.
It's silly though, because, you know, the point that I made about myself and my own thought processes was, it was obvious what it was. And even you said a moment ago, it was obvious that it was just related to, you know, a crick in the neck.
Yeah.
What the nurse practitioner said though was, she basically said, oh, you know, these types of things come with age. And actually my mum said something similar, you know, she said, you know, when you're 20, 30 years old, it's highly unlikely that something like this is going to happen to you.
Yeah.
But when you're a little bit older than that, that's when, you know, a little twist here and a little, you know, issue there can often result in these types of problems. But, maybe 48 hours ago, I decided to just try coming off the pills a bit.
The pills were really affecting you.
Yeah,
that was the other
rubbish.
thing. We had a few days of, you were just a bit like a zombie.
They were
you know,
rubbish.
It felt really drugged up. And
so I
said to him,
retracted.
do you think you should maybe stop taking those?
So I
did.
pondered over, you know, how to work it, and then worked out a plan, and, you know, eased off one side of the painkillers, then eased off the others as well, and, you know, within 48 hours, I'm feeling pretty good.
It feels much better, doesn't it?
It's sensitive and
it probably,
still slightly
you know,
painful,
it probably would have just resolved itself naturally.
One thing has been happening recently. And, you know, it's interesting because it's just started another run on our terrestrial TV channels, on our standard TV channels. But we've actually been, or Bryony's been wanting to watch Friends a lot. And we both watched Friends when
back in the day, yeah.
When it came out.
Yeah.
And, you know, you watched it and funny, you know, you never really stopped and thought about it. But we've been watching it and we've been surprisingly offended.
It's very rude, actually. Do you know what? Because we're watching it through the eyes of a almost 13-year-old.
Oh, you've blown it. I thought I'd had this moment of clarity as to the reason why we watched it 20 years ago and
no, that's
we didn't
the
have a problem.
Why. We're watching it, you know, you don't watch it in the same way when you know that your child's watching it as well. You're kind of like analysing it.
The thing is, though, I think what we have to remember is, and I think some of the things that were on the TV when I was in my formative age, you know, things like the Benny Hill show.
Oh, gosh, yeah. But you'd never get away with that these days.
You wouldn't. And there's nothing wrong with me. My point being is, we're sat there watching Friends and, you know, we're, you know, proper parent watching, when actually you just need to just take a step back and just go, well, look, I saw and watched way worse than this.
Well, that's probably true.
And we are perfectly rounded human beings.
Yeah, there's nothing terribly bad. And I think it's good for kids and teenagers to be exposed to these things sort of gradually, isn't it? Rather than you keep them away from talk such as goes on Friends. You know, it's nothing ever really bad, is it? You know, it's Friends, but
I tell you now, she'll be hearing way worse than that at school.
Oh, I'm sure she will. Will. Yeah. So I think it's good that I'd rather she sit there and ask us the question and we tell her what it means.
Then she goes away and Googles
Then
it.
she goes, yeah. So
that would be scary. Yeah. It's such an interesting process, I think, going into that sort of putting on the parent glasses, because it's only really been in the last couple of years that has started to
because she's
affect
watching
me.
Oh, right, okay, because, you know, as they approach, you know, teenage years, they obviously watch things of a more adult nature, don't they?
Yeah.
It's not Disney films and Peppa Pig, it's young adult sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Which is completely fine, you know.
Yeah.
She's growing up, and that's just part of growing up.
It is. And, you know, I think that probably what all us parents need to remember is our own childhoods and what we experienced. And the world was a much freer place when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And so what passed before my eyes.
Yeah, in terms of things like political correctness, that kind of thing, we mean, you know, it was very un-PC back then, wasn't
So I think
it?
perhaps, you know, we don't need to worry as much as we do.
No, probably not.
Last episode, we finished the Pudding Club for 2018.
We did.
Don't panic.
It'll be back.
As you know, March next year, it's back. And we opened a vote.
Oh, we did?
Yeah, we did open a vote. So, you know, you need to get yourself ready.
I've no idea.
Well, I can't give you the results of the whole vote because I
Right.
don't have a brain that big.
All right.
I wish I could remember absolutely every, but I do know the top 3.
Right.
The most exciting bit of all.
I don't know this.
Well, the most exciting bit of all is right at this moment. It may change by the time you watch this and you go, because we'll leave the vote open and you can
Right.
just keep voting. Right at this moment, it's a tie.
It's a tie.
And we said that today's the day we would give the official winner. So the official winner, it's 2, which I think is wonderful. Because what did I have for my birthday?
2.
2 cakes. I think it's fitting. It's good and right and proper. So what are the winners? Millionaire Shortbread
Really?
and Summer Fruits Roulade.
Wow.
And they're the winners by about 10% of the vote.
Gosh. I'm
And-
not sure I would have guessed that, actually.
And between them, they took in total about 35% of the vote.
Right.
So, you know, they're big winners. Just a little bit behind them. In what is 2nd/3rd place, of course. So these are the top 3. So Millionaire Shortbread, Summer Fruits Roulade, tied 1st place. You'll be pleased to know.
Yeah.
In 2nd place, it's Syrup Sponge.
Oh, yay. That probably would have been my favourite, actually, because that's the one I make the most,
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah. So,
I
you know,
want to make one now, actually.
what a brilliant and just, you know, final, because I love all those. They're all marvellous. So you can carry on voting, and we'll just leave it open because I think it'll be interesting, you know, to see if that changes any. But they do have quite a big lead, so I can't imagine it's
Right.
going to change.
Brilliant.
So the Pudding Club's finished, and today, so sad, but it's a sadness tinged with great excitement. And we'll talk more about that later on in the show, because as our spring-summer programming, as that comes to an end, our winter programming kicks into gear. It all starts now, but we'll talk more about that later on in the show, because now it's time for us to find out, Kay Jones, what's on your needles?
Well, guess what?
What?
I have 3 brand new projects to show you.
I don't.
You don't?
No.
Oh, well, I'm making up for his lack of exciting projects then,
Finished
aren't I?
something, then.
You have finished something. And because I've also finished a few things, I've obviously cast on a few things. And I only realised yesterday that all of the things I'm going to show you are new. So that's,
No.
they are.
I don't believe
So
it.
that's fantastic. The first thing is I've cast on another pair of socks for Dan. I wasn't going to knit him any more socks till December. I did say that. But do you know what? I must obviously enjoy it, because I think this was just a couple of days ago. I just thought, oh, do you know what? I really want to cast a pair of socks on for you. I said, is that okay? And Dan's like, oh, of course, yeah. So I went into my stash and I pulled out a skein of Opal, and it's from the 100wasser work range. That's an artist, and it's based on a series of his paintings. The last pair of socks, actually, not the last one, the one before, was also from this same range. And I love, it's a fantastic colourway range, this. You can still get it as well. I got this from a German website, but if you just Google it, you know, I did find it in a couple of places.
Was that one of those ones where it was all in German?
Yeah.
Is that like really sort of...
Yeah,
or do you...
I've ordered twice from it. It's Sockenwoll Paradise, something like that. I think Sarah Hepworth uses it. She uses another one as well. And I think there is a way of converting a website, isn't there?
Yes.
Into a different language. I don't know how to do that. So I just use Google Translate for all of the questions.
Do you copy and paste it into Google Translate or something? Is that how you...
No, I just typed what it said.
All right.
I don't copy and paste.
So you physically type the German?
Yeah.
That's impressive.
If you just type the German into, I don't even know if it's Google Translate, I just keyed into my iPad German translation to English, and then this thing comes up where you key in the German on the left side and then it just comes up in English on the right.
Right.
And I just did that for each of the questions. It was only things like name, address. I've done it twice now and I managed it and it was fine. So I think I will order some more of this range. But this is the colour I'm using. It's number 2107. This is the colourway name. I'll hold it up at the bottom there, and any German speaking people will be able to read that, I'm sure. But I did translate it, and what came up, I wrote it on the back of the ball band.
You sound very pleased with yourself.
The Way Back from You to Me.
That's the name of the colourway.
Apparently.
That's lengthy.
That's what that says there.
Yes.
It's quite lengthy, but it is quite lengthy.
I've knit this in The Way Back from You to Me.
Yeah, that must be the name.
It rolls off the tongue.
That must be the name of the painting, although why the painting is called that is this kind of very abstract look. Oh, it matches. It looks a bit like Dan's top look. That's funny.
Now, you see, you've mentioned it now, so we do need to touch on this.
Okay.
This was a gift from my wonderful mum.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. And I love it. It's marvellous. I've gone full solo. Normally I dress up a bit, you know, I have a shirt on, but today, in, you know, celebration of my birthday, I thought you'd quite like to see some of, you know, my little presents. And this was from my mum, and this was one of 2 t-shirts from my lovely wife. The best present from my wife is on the way still.
Oh, it is.
And it's so exciting.
It's not arrived yet. I've chased it.
Because all through my life, I've always supported the Cleveland Browns and the American football team, but I've never had one of their shirts. And in the last sort of 3 or 4 years, I've always thought maybe I'll get one, but they've been so rubbish. I've just thought, no, do you know what? I won't. And then the year that we ordered one,
They're doing quite well.
they've turned out that they're actually quite good. So I think it's me. I think I'm a lucky charm.
Yeah.
But you see, now I'm worried. Hopefully, if they lose the minute I put the shirt on, I'll feel terrible.
No.
But I don't care. And what I'm so excited about that is you brought it in colours, which you're going to be showing later in a project which you're showing.
That's true. Yeah. So, and it's like a proper replica.
It is,
shirt, isn't it?
It is. Carry on.
So back to the project. So I cast these on, and this is the yarn. It's lovely, and this, it looks really nice, doesn't it? In the ball, but this just goes to show that you've just no idea what it's going to knit up like. And admittedly, there is a picture on the ball band, but that picture does not do the yarn justice, I've got to say, because look at how this is knitting up. Oh.
Amazing.
I just think that's fantastic. This is how Opal should be. I'm not going to get on my Opal bandwagon again.
Can I say something? I would love a pair of socks solely in that.
This bit here, I know. This bit. Look at this bit.
Imagine that like, it messes with your eyes.
I love this bit here, the stripy bit. And
To
I
be
love the
fair,
really thin green
Those
stripes.
pink
And
stripes, green
I love the pink, obviously. I love the pink. But I mean and this is the repeat. I've just come into the green again down here, can you see? And this is the green up here.
That's my favourite by miles.
What?
That bit there.
That bit there. This bit there. Yeah.
Diagonal stripy bit. I think that is phenomenal.
It's brilliant.
I don't recall seeing a stripe like that.
Yeah, it does do that sometimes. And you can see how it's kind of diagonally striped. It won't. That depends on your gauge, I think, and the number of stitches and everything. Sometimes it won't do a diagonal thing. Sometimes it'll look more kind of just speckly. It just really depends on your gauge. So hopefully my gauge will stay the same. That's going to be a diagonal, but I couldn't guarantee that. So I'm up to the point of the heel flap. I mean, I knit this in no time because I was just like, oh, what's going to come next? What's going to come next? You know, it's just so interesting to knit. And this is the type of opal I love. Can you see how you've got a bit of blue, a bit of natural, and then a tiny speck of red, and then that repeats? I mean, that's just brilliant how they do that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this particular ball is lovely and plump, and it's nice and woolly. I think I've come to a kind of conclusion about the whole opal thing, and some being thick and some being thin, because the last pair that I knit down, do you know, in the Van Gogh, the short pair in the Van Gogh colourway, that's obviously a very old yarn, very old range, But it was on the thin side, I'll be honest with you. The yarn was on the skinny side. It was totally fine, you know, it knitted up lovely, but it definitely was on the skinny side. And that one is from ages ago. This one, although it's in a slightly older range, you can still get it. It's obviously been made years after the Van Gogh range, and yet this one is lovely and plump. But then sometimes, you know, the ones that I'm buying now can be a bit skinnier. I just wonder if it's like certain batches of yarn that they get in are sometimes just a bit skinnier than others. And maybe that's just a sort of, just what happens, because it's obviously a natural product and sometimes these things can happen. So I think that's the conclusion that I've maybe come to, that sometimes you can get a batch of yarn in that's just a bit skinnier. That makes me feel a bit better, I think, that it's not always, that's not always going to happen, you know, with newer ones that you buy. But this particular ball is fantastic. It's lovely and plump and it's woolly and oh, it's just an absolute joy. So I'm to the point of the heel flap and I've got to decide now what to do about the heel, and I'm definitely going to put in a contrast because I do want to maintain the sequence. So I pulled out a few balls of Drops Fable. I've got a cream, which I think would obviously just pick up the cream in the yarn, and I think that would be really nice actually, cream.
It would.
Yeah, I might go with that now I've seen it. Then I've got this sort of mushroomy sort of colour.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay.
Yeah, and then I've got this sort of plummy aubergine. I mean, that looks quite nice.
I think it's cream.
I think the cream, actually, looking at that now, don't you? I think I'm going to go with the cream because it makes everything else pop a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think I'll go with the cream for heels
It's
and
nice.
possibly toes. It's just lovely. And 2.5mm, I've gone back to 2.5mm because I think I've concluded that the main problem with the socks being baggy, the last, you know, we spoke about that on Dan, I think it's because they were shorty socks. I think that was the issue.
Yeah.
Because they've been okay, those Van Gogh ones, haven't they? That I did in the 2.25, and they're not baggy on you, are they?
Is that the final ones that you were worried were going to be too tight?
Yeah.
They've been fine.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I might do. If I knit shorty socks, then I think I'll use 2.25, but otherwise 2.5 for normal ones.
Yeah. I think so.
I think that works, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Oh, and it's just gorgeous. So if you can get a hold of some, if you've got some of this in your stash, I mean, I've had this for a little while. And just, you know, you've no idea. I just thought, oh yeah, it's pretty, but I just love it. I think it's just... And this is, you know, Opal. Please dye up more yarns like this.
Speaking of... have you finished?
Yeah.
Cool. Where were we the other day where we saw some interesting looking sheep? Do you remember? They were like all
They were grey and white.
Yeah.
We were
I wonder what
driving
type they were.
somewhere. They weren't Herdwicks.
No.
They definitely weren't Herdwicks, because I know they can be grey and white, can't they? That sort of mottly, darky grey and white. They definitely weren't Herdwicks because they've got a very distinctive face, haven't they? And you only tend to find Herdwicks really in the lakes sort of area. And it was near here that we saw them.
They were different to any sheep I've seen around here before.
Yeah.
I do look...
I should look in my book. I've got the Fleece and Fibre Source book. I should look in there. Dan Jones.
Yes.
What's on your needles?
Well, this is a fresh cast on since last time I saw you. It's just this cast on of a second sock. So,
Well,
and there's the first sock. Woo!
Let's take it off.
Let's take it off.
And I've got some yarn dangling behind here because we only have one sock for the lost socks
I'll be rectifying
board.
that though, because I'll be casting on a Jemima sock.
Oh, you will?
Yeah, I'll be doing that probably this weekend.
Oh, brilliant. I need to find you some yarn then.
Yes, please.
What do you want to use?
Whatever you would like to wear them in.
Oh, is it for me?
Well, it's likely to be.
Oh, right.
So if I start on with that, then if you decide you don't want them, then but you will. You always want the things I knit. Isn't that sweet?
I've got another skein of Nicole C. Mendez, which is beautiful.
Right.
That would look great in that pattern.
Okay, we'll do that.
Because you like this yarn, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's plump and it's lovely.
Yeah, so that might be the thing. So there's the fit. Oh, I've got a blocker.
I really love this pattern, and I've grown to love it even more on the second sock because I love the fact, even though, you know, as you well know, I'm a total convert to the clicker, I love the fact that you can always just do that little reassuring check because it's a 3-row repeat. And
Or 4, you can make it a 4-row if you
yeah,
want.
well, we know that because I did that at certain points on the other sock, as we know.
Yeah,
And
I can see that.
Yeah, great.
There and there and there
All right, calm down.
and there.
All right. What I love though is that, you know, first time I'd never done so many twisted stitches, and I made a few mistakes. This time, well, I'm not making as many mistakes.
You kept splitting the yarn on these ones, but you haven't on that, have you?
No, because it's practice.
That looks brilliant, yeah.
Practice makes perfect, most definitely.
It was only the top bit of this sock, to be fair, where you've done it. The bottom bit is fine.
Which is, and that follows with my logic, because that's where I was first doing it, and then I got in the zone. So, you know, it's a stitch now that I've learnt how to do
lovely.
Pretty well.
And these are the Prairie Socks, which is my pattern.
Yes.
I think we said, did we?
Yes.
But you've put in an umbrella toe, haven't you?
Yes.
Which isn't in the Prairie Socks. This one is in Drippity Drop.
Yeah.
And Jemima.
Yes. I just love the stripy yarn. What's that called?
Self-striping.
Okay. I was close. I love the self-striping yarn, and I never really got self-striping yarn. I couldn't really understand what the thrill was. I mean, what an idiot. I'm so stupid.
Nicole's is particularly lovely because she gets it very tonal.
Yeah.
Can you see how lovely and tonal each of the stripes are? And I think that's fantastic.
And let's just compare.
Oh, this is what we needed to talk about, isn't it?
Look at that. Look at that. I'm probably 2 rows out.
Oh, right.
So...
Not yet.
Oh, no.
It might be a row.
It might be a row out, but it's looking... That's looking pretty good.
It's not bad.
That is looking pretty good. Kay gives you this rubbish about, oh, I don't want them matched. I want them matched.
I'm not bothered whether they're matched or not.
To absolute perfection. That's what I'm looking for.
But the thing that really annoyed me...
Yeah, and that's what's going to happen again. That's what's going to happen again.
It will, yeah,
yes,
it will.
Correct.
Is that he didn't do any yarn management for the heel. He just carried on knitting.
What I should do is I should stop counting the rows, and I should just look at the stripes.
Yeah, well,
and then
you can do that.
When I'm partway through that stripe, I'll start my heel flap.
Yeah. You can see he just carried on knitting with the same yarn, picked up stitches, came back to here, and it completely follows on.
Oh, yes. That, young lady, is called skill.
And what I do, you know how a lot of people use like a fish lips kiss heel or a short row heel for self-striping because they don't want to disturb the stripes. I don't care for fish lips kiss heel. I have tried it and it just wasn't for me. And I have also done a short row heel. I put a short row heel into my dandelion socks, which is the Platinum collection pattern. And it was, you know, it fits fine and I wear those socks. And I think it just depends on your foot shape. And I know for a lot of people, short row heels, fish lips kiss heels fit really, really well. And that's fantastic. And I think you just have to go.
Might be what you're used to as well, you know.
It could be, yeah. It could be what you're used to.
You're used to a heel flap and gusset.
I'm used to a heel flap and gusset. But what I do now and I find that it maintains the stripes, and you only just really get maybe 1 or 2 stripes that might be a row thinner than the others, is I think it depends on your heel turn that you use. A lot of heel turns, I think there's like the French one.
What's a French heel turn?
And a half handkerchief.
Oh, I've done that.
Those types where you end up with more stitches left after you've finished your heel turn,
right.
And that means you've got more stitches to decrease.
Right.
So you're working more stitches around here, and therefore your stripes are going to look thinner
okay.
around that section.
Right.
But by using a square heel turn, or is it called a Dutch heel as well? But it's the one that's square. You end up with less stitches at the end of your heel turn, so that means you've got less stitches to decrease here. Right. And therefore you're not working as many stitches in the round over the actual gusset decreases. So it only affects your stripes. Not that, you know, I think it's fine. Like I said, you might just get a couple of stripes that are a row maybe thinner than the others. But I don't think it's really noticeable.
What a superb realisation, you know, just sitting here talking and saying that a moment ago. I love the fact now, and I'm sure all of you will do this, but now I know when I get to the third one of that's when I'm going to be getting ready to do the heel turn.
A lot of people do
that. And then 1, 2, 3.
You just count the stripes rather than, you don't have to.
I mean, that's genius. I love it.
Yeah, so you know that when you've knit through so many stripes that you've finished the leg or whatever.
It's so much more fun.
Yeah.
Instead, I mean, I do love the clicker, but just having that. I think what you're always looking for, especially with my track record, as we established last episode, with length of legs and all that rubbish.
I've worn those socks yesterday and they're absolutely fine.
Oh, whoopee.
I wore them all day yesterday. I didn't notice the difference in the leg length.
Oh, that's great.
It's fine.
Thank goodness. Well, you heard it here first, folks. Just stop worrying about leg length.
Had them on you didn't even notice I had them on all day yesterday.
That's shocking. So, where am I? I'm probably just over halfway, a little bit more than halfway to the heel flap. And yes, next time you see them, hopefully heel flap will be done and it'll be a lovely, that's the test now, isn't it?
See, yeah.
Will he nail it as good as last time? We both know that I will.
And this is Shrieking Shack. This is the colourway from Nicole. And talking of self-striping, I want to knit Bryony a pair of socks for Christmas. And I pulled these two out. I bought these last year. They're both from London House Yarns. I've got Hermione's jumper, which mimics one of the jumpers, obviously, that Hermione wears in one of the films, I forget which. And then Yule Ball. And I think I'm leaning towards Yule Ball at the moment because it's Yule Ball and, that's festive, isn't it? And it's just such lovely colours. Oh, and they're both sparkly. So I'm sort of deciding. And I love that this black, actually, that comes with that. And I think that would be... It's quite dramatic, isn't it, to put a black with that? And there is a black stripe in there, so it picks that up. So I think I'll be doing that. But, these, as we know, are self-striping. And actually, I think I'm going to throw a little designy sort of thing into these just for a bit of fun and to make it not quite a plain sock. I'm just going to have a little go at throwing something into those. So that'll be interesting, and I'll show you that.
What else is on your needles?
Well, this is very exciting, and this is all Kelly Lay's fault. Kelly asked me a question a few days ago, maybe a week ago, and she just said, have you ever knitted thrummed mittens? And I said, yes, I have. And I knit them a few years ago. They're on my Ravelry project page if you want to go and have a look. And I've worn them for the past 3 or 4 winters, probably. And they're looking a bit worn, I'll be honest. So I said to her, do you know what? That might be brilliant for a tutorial series. I thought, why not? I knew that I'd got some fibre stashed away, and I looked through my yarns and picked out a lovely yarn. So I actually sort of started them the day after Kelly asked me that question. So I've worked through the first one, and I'll tell you what my injury was first of all, and I'm certain it was knitting this mitten that caused it, but it's my own fault and I should have known better. So my knitting injury, and I'm certain this is what caused it, was I decided to magic loop the mitten, and you can use double points, and I was going to use double points. I was going to use some wooden double points, and in hindsight, that's what I should have done. I decided, in my ultimate wisdom, to use a Chowgu red lace. It's 4mm. I had it in a fixed circular. And it works fine, but as we know with Chowgu red lace, not the mini twists, the actual just original red lace, it has a really stiff cord and it's a metal needle. And I think the combined, and I knit this mitten in like 2 days, just because I was really enthused about it, and I didn't really want to stop until I'd finished. I think the combination of the stiff cable, knitting magic loop with metal, I did something to my hand and my wrist, and it still hurts. So I've just had like a tuber grip bandage on it just to sort of give it some support, and I've been taking painkillers when it's been really bad. It's definitely getting better, but I'm just taking it slowly. But I think this is what did my wrist in. So I actually ordered, and it should come today, I've ordered a higher fixed circular to do the second one. That cable is much more flexible. And I could have used an interchangeable. I've got an interchangeable set, but I just kind of prefer fixed for working magic loop. And also I think the higher fixed, they swivel, don't they? And I think that might help as well. So I won't be using Chowgu red lace to magic loop again. I think that's what did it. So anyway, I will tell you what the pattern is. Like I said, it's a free pattern on Ravelry. It's by Debbie Wilbur, and it's called Easy Mittens with Thrums. And there it is. And what I really liked about this pattern is, can you see how rounded the top of the mitten is? Because the pair I knit before were quite pointed and I prefer a much rounded top. So I went for this pattern, and this is what I followed. However, I didn't put my thrums into the mitten in the same way. So obviously when I'm doing the tutorial, I'll be showing exactly how I've put the thrums in. Now, when I knit the first pair, I used a method that it's not the same method that's in this pattern, and it isn't the method that I used. So I've actually tried 3 different methods, and I find the one that I've used for this mitten seems to be the best for me, you know, so that's the one I've gone with. So I haven't put the thumb in yet, but this is the first mitten. Isn't it lovely? Look at how poofy. Can you see? Look at it side on. Look, can you see? It's like a completely poofy look. It's like a puff fish. And I can put my hand in, so I'll show you. I made like a little nest in there. And obviously the thumb comes out here. Oh, it's just so lovely. So the yarn I used is beautiful, actually. It's, I can't say it, Prairie. It's the Gilead. And this is the natural colour. And I've had a couple of balls of this in my stash for a while. I think I wanted to order some one time when I saw someone knitting something in it, and I thought that looks really lovely. So this is the main yarn, and it's a worsted weight. You get loads of yardage. You get 250 metres per 100 grams. It's very lofty, so I think that's why it's a higher yardage. 4 to 5 millimetres it recommends, so I'm certain it's like a worsted weight. And it's knitting up to the same gauge as the pattern. So it's super lovely. And then I had also in my stash a couple of bits of fibre. I don't quite know what they're called, the technical name, but this one is from, both of them were from Deb at Fondant Fibre. This one is the Tissington Hill, and it is Shetland Merino and Bamboo. And look at this. Oh my goodness, it's just so beautiful. Look at that. Oh my goodness. And it is a soft, you can't even barely feel it. Do you know what I mean? It's just absolutely gorgeous. And I just thought these two together, they just look lovely. And I find that the way that this one's been sort of presented, I think it's basically just one long strip like this, but it's very easy to pull thrums, you know, bits of fibre which you make into your thrum off of it. I did have another sort of set from Deb, but they were rolags, and they're kind of prepared in a different way. They're like little sausages, and I found it quite difficult to pull the yarn that pulled the fibre from those to make the thrums. So I went with this one. I'm glad I did actually, because it's just beautiful. And that's how the mitten looks so far. And the way that I'm putting the thrums in, I've not done this before, but I think it's a much better way for a number of reasons, but mainly because the way I did it before on the other pair was that basically you used your little thrum to knit the stitch and then just knit the next stitch with the normal yarn. And I think the danger with that is that if your thrum breaks or wears out and comes out, it's going to unravel because it's an actual stitch. Whereas this method doesn't do that. If that thrum comes out, it won't cause the mitten to unravel. So like I said in the tutorial, I've shown the method. So I'm really enjoying this, and I've just got to now cast on the second one, and I'm going to wait to finish the second one to do the thumbs, just so that I can do them both at the same time, and then that'll make it easier for doing the tutorial because I'll be doing one following another. And hopefully that needle should come today so I can get that started. Shall I show you the inside? This is so fun. It's like some kind of Sesame Street creature. Look at it. It looks like someone's mad pink hair from the back, doesn't it, like that? I love it. And the idea is that the heat of your hand and just the movement of putting your hand in and out of the mitten, it will felt all of this so that it just becomes like a matted, felted fabric on the inside of your mitten, which is brilliant. You know, they're so warm. The pair that I've knit before are just so incredibly warm. And I'm keeping this in a fantastic bag. I don't often show you my bags, but I just wanted to show you this one because I love it so much. Isn't it fantastic? And I got this from Lacey. It's just so beautifully made. I absolutely love it. Thank you, Lacey. It's just fantastic. So I'll be using this an awful lot, I think. Love it.
Lovely.
Yes.
Look, it's the Samantha jumper, and as you know, I finished one sleeve, and now I've done a bit more of the other sleeve. And actually, going down the sleeve, once you've finished the decreases, I mean, it didn't really take that long at all, that first one.
No, it didn't, I don't think.
So, you know, hopefully, and then all it is just a case of is just doing the top, and then it's done. Because it's not like there's any ends to weave in, not like on the
There'll be a
Irish
couple.
coffee. Yes, of course.
And we'll have to sort out under the sleeves and things like that.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's the next thing.
Yeah.
I had an absolute disaster with the wraps and turns just because of the way the pattern had been written. It just wasn't clear enough. And you know, these are the points when I will always, I can't remember who taught me this, but it was to do with music and it was to do with learning. And they said that anyone who claimed to be an expert in a particular area didn't understand the depths of that. Of course there are experts in lots of areas, but those people never tend to tell you they're an expert because they respect the knowledge which they've gained over the years, and they show they're an expert by their actions, not by their words. And you know, whilst I've been a knitter for a little while, and you tend to start to think, oh yeah, you know, I'm getting this. I'm totally not. You know, I still consider myself a beginner to an intermediate because there's just years of learning to go.
Not a beginner.
Because I think when it comes to things like this,
Not
I
a
think I
beginner.
am.
No.
Because the mistake was the first time I clearly sat with you and we read through the pattern, and then you went, right, okay, this and this, and then I then sat down straight away and got on with it. I had a period of time, I think, where I could do. Whereas this time, because of the success of that first one, I just looked at Kay's wrap and turn tutorial, read the pattern, how I would have read the pattern, and got on with it. And actually, the way the pattern's written, I kept wrapping and turning on the same stitch rather than going to the next stitch. And so 3 times, Kay ripped it back, and 3 times I knit it again. And by the time I'd done it the 3rd time, the yarn was starting to felt. So we really were at the point of, you've just got to get on with it now. And so I did, and on one side, it's fine. I mean, it's perfect.
Yeah.
That's the knit side. So on the wrap and turn, that's the side where I was getting to the knit, and I was lifting it up and onto the needle, picking up the wrap. And then on the purl side, it's just a total disaster. And I'm really sort of upset about it. What's happened is when I've come back on the purl side, I've just not picked up the right thing. So I've just messed it up. Sometimes I've got it right, probably 30% of the time I've got it right, and 70% of the time I've got it wrong. But looking at the way that it's hanging, hopefully...
I'm just going to sew it from the back. You know, I'll be able to make it look okay.
Cool.
You know, there's basically a bunch of holes down the side here. Probably see here.
And that is messing up the purl side pickup of the wraps.
But I'm just going to sew it, you know, I'll be able to do something to make that look okay. And it is on the front of the thing, but I'll be able to sort it. And I said, he said, oh, I'll have to rip it back again. I said, we're not ripping it back again.
If you think about it though, if it was on the back, it would constantly be being stretched that way and opened.
True.
With it being on the
that's
front,
true.
it's not going to be being stretched.
Yeah.
So I was actually, you know, when I thought it through,
Yeah.
it's actually in the best possible place.
Yeah. So I'll sort it out when.
Pride is the wrong word. It's very rare that I ever feel pride in much, but pride comes before a fall, and you know, you're thinking, I'm going now, this is really good, and you know, you're getting on with it, and I did it the first time, so I can do it the second time, and then it comes and it bites you. And what makes a man or a woman
Being able to do wraps and turns?
No.
I don't think so.
No. What makes a man or a woman is how they respond and come back from things like that. And I won't lie to you, I'm not happy. And I'm a bit sad. And I'm slightly disappointed. But, you know, that's perfect. And that's perfect. And Kay's a genius. So that'll look fine.
I can make it look okay.
And, you know, the rest of it looks fine. And, you know, we're human, aren't we?
These things happen, don't
These
they?
things happen. And lessons
learned, and we absolutely was not, you know, we're not going
I love that.
we absolutely was not ripping it back again because, you know,
we was not doing it. Well, we couldn't because
we
it
would have
been
had
a
to
disaster.
have broken the yarn and taken out that section because, like Dan said, it was getting all felty.
It would have made it worse. So the right thing to do, sometimes the right thing to do is just to get on with it.
To leave it and just carry on and sort it out afterwards because we can all, you know, we can sort these things, can't we?
So, look, I think we're at an exciting moment because I'm sure, thinking about this one, I showed that on one podcast and when we came back the next time...
You finished it.
Finished it.
So you should have finished the other sleeve for next time and we went then only got the collar to do.
Yeah.
And that won't take long at all.
It won't take long at all.
I'll pick it up and then it's just a few rows.
We are at an exciting moment.
It's nearly
Oh,
done.
yes,
It's nearly
it is
done.
nearly done. What else is on your needles? And this is the moment where you get to see the colours of my American football shirt.
Well, oh my goodness. I'm knitting Dan another vest.
Woohoo!
Let's just say it. I made the mistake of showing him this pattern a few weeks ago and he's like, oh, I really want that. I thought, oh, what have I done? And then I think he forgot about it. I was like, oh, he's forgotten. And then something reminded him. And
It
he's
was
like,
Michelle McKean.
That's right. Michelle, it's your fault. So I'll show you the pattern. It's a cricket vest. You know, like a traditional English cricket vest called Hutton by Pat Mancini.
And we all know why it's called Hutton.
No, I don't.
Because one of the most famous cricketers of all time was Len Hutton.
I didn't know that.
There you go.
Right. It's in the Knitter magazine. This is a fairly recent issue. It's issue 127. It's this one. There is a page on Ravelry for it, but you can't buy the pattern via Ravelry. You've got to get it from the magazine. So it's basically like you can see there, it's got cables and twisted stitches on a pearl background, reverse stocking stitch background with these sort of coloured stripes. It's knit in two pieces, just front and back, like the other one. You know, it's an old-fashioned style pattern. It's a DK weight. It uses King Cole Luxury Merino DK, which is 100% superwash merino wool. I am using a King Cole yarn, but I'm not using this particular one because I know that the one it specifies, it's the type of merino. Do you know those really, really soft, bouncy skeins you can get, like Debbie Bliss Rialto, that sort of yarn? It's the ones that have lots and lots of plies. I think they generally have like 8 plies. And they're really, really soft and bouncy and lovely. But I just wanted something that was a bit more woolly and a bit more sort of robust. I'm using Merino Blend DK Superwash, and I've used this before, so I knew what it was like. It's very soft, perfectly soft. It's just a bit more woolly, you know, a bit more of a kind of traditional woolly sort of look. So this is the yarn I'm using, King Cole Merino Blend DK. And Dan didn't want, the pattern is cream and then it's got red and blue on the pattern. He didn't want red and blue, he wanted
It's red, white and blue.
Red, white and blue, of course.
Which is, of course.
Very traditionally British, isn't it?
Yes. So that will be like the colours which the England cricket team probably wore in the 50s.
I'm sure.
I didn't want that,
We
though.
wanted to give it a bit of our own twist.
I wanted to give it a Cleveland Browns twist.
Cleveland Browns twist. So I've gone for the cream, as you can see, as the main colour.
Which is the colour that they wear when they're away from home sometimes.
Right. Oh. But then the contrast colours are these.
It's their colour rush kit. Oh, yes.
So this is the colour. So anybody who knows the team colours will know that these are the colours.
Oh, yes.
So the kind of rusty orange is cinnamon.
And Kate had no idea.
What?
when I picked
No,
colours?
I didn't, no. And then I was like, and then he told me once I started knitting it, I'm like, oh, all right. The brown is chocolate. So cinnamon and chocolate, isn't that lovely? And then, oh gosh, I'm determined to drop those. And then the cream is Aran, that's the colourway name, not the base. It's not an Aran base, it's DK weight, but the colourway is Aran, which is just this beautiful
Isn't that
cream.
confusing?
It is a bit confusing, that, isn't it? I think they've called it Aran because this is the colour of traditional Aran jumpers.
Right.
So that's why they've called it that.
So they don't have other colours in that range called worsted, DK,
No.
fingering weight.
Not that I'm aware of, no. Now, I did swatch, albeit it's a tiny swatch. Largely, I don't have much faith in swatching because I just think your gauge changes constantly. So I don't generally swatch for anything except garments. And in this particular case, because I was using a different yarn to the one recommended, I thought I better swatch. So I swatched with 4mm, which is what he recommended. And I kind of knew as soon as I started knitting, I thought, this looks a bit loosey-goosey. So I was actually glad when, according to the pattern gauge, it was too loose. So I went down a needle size. So I'm using 3.75 for the main body. And I'm still using, it's 3.25 for the ribs, and I'm still using that. I'll show you where I'm up to. I haven't done a whole lot, but I've cast, I've cast it on and I'm knitting through the pattern. It's difficult to show when it's an actual piece. Aren't the colours lovely though, to start off with? Don't they look fantastic, those colours? If I hold it upside down, I can kind of stretch it out a bit better, can't I? I just love the way the colours look. And it has you, because you're changing colours quite often and it's a rib, it has you do that thing where you knit a plain row when you change the colour, and I'm not keen on that. I don't like what it does to the fabric because you can feel it produces like a ridge that kind of wants to fold back on itself because you've got all the purl bumps on the back. It kind of wants to naturally fold. But I think in this instance, it makes it look clean, doesn't it? And you can't see any of the purl bumps. I think once it's blocked, it'll be fine. And I've started on the pattern. I don't know if you can see, but I've only done one cable twist so far. But you can see it coming through there. Now my issue at the moment, and I'm hoping this resolves itself, is that it looks really big. The sizing is a bit strange. It does say in the description that it's a loose, easy fit. Now, you didn't want a loose, easy fit.
Well, if it fits like that, I've not got a problem.
Yeah, I mean, it fits him.
They should have
I don't
said.
think that's a particularly... They should have said what size this is. They should say model wears. It's always useful, isn't it? All they needed to put there is model is a whatever chest, wearing size whatever. And I think that would have been really helpful because you can see how it fits. But basically, what the pattern tells you is that, for example, for a size medium, it's to fit chest 40 to 42. The actual chest size comes out 49 3/4. That's a lot of ease, I think, for a man to wear, because men don't generally wear big baggy sweaters, do they? Like women can wear oversized boxy things. Men don't generally do that. That seems like a lot of ease to me. Dan's chest is 43.5, so he kind of falls between a medium and a large. Large is 44 to 46, comes out at 53.5. That's just massive. There was no way that was going to be right. So I thought, right, I'll do a medium. Comes out 49 3/4. Because I thought I can't do a small. A small is 36 to 38, and Dan's 43.5. That just doesn't seem right, does it? Because I was concerned about sort of the fit under the arms and across the shoulders and things like this if I did anything smaller than a medium. So I've gone for a medium. It just looks huge.
I think it'll be all right.
But at the moment, if I stretch this out, this is one piece. I mean, look how big that looks. However, because it's cables, and I've only done one cable cross at the moment, I think once I've worked a few more cables, that's going to pull the fabric in, isn't it? And if you look at the gauge in the pattern, it gives you the gauge in stocking stitch and then the gauge in the pattern. And I think it's 7 stitches different over 4 inches. So it's 7 stitches smaller over the 4 inches in the pattern as opposed to stocking stitch. So my hope is that once I've got through a few pattern repeats, it's gonna be okay. So I'm keeping going with that in mind. And it's a really simple cross, I don't know if you can see, and then with twisted stitches in between. It's really slow going, I'll be honest. It's really slow going because there's no rest rows. The reverse side, it's like a rib. You're doing knits pearls all the way across. It's just like a sequence, you know, a rib sequence. So it's very slow to knit, and I've just had to resign myself for this being a more longer term project, because it's just going to take, it just takes time. That's just as it is. And if it takes me a long time, it takes me a long time, you know, if it's not done till next summer or whatever. But I'm enjoying it. I am enjoying it. The yarn's lovely. I will say the yarn's lovely. You know, if you're looking for because it's reasonable. I think it's £3 something a ball, 50 grams. So it's very reasonable. It's like I said, it's nice and soft, but it's still a bit woolly. It's really lovely. I really, really like it. I definitely recommend that King Cole Merino Blend DK. And the needles I'm using, I don't know if you can remember, I didn't bring them down, but I was debating getting some wooden interchangeables, if you remember. I did get some, and I went for hires in the end, and I'm really glad I did. I've used these loads. I'm using them to knit quite a large design at the moment. I'm using them on this, and I've used them for something else. I really love these. I really like the grippiness, but yet they're still smooth. They're lovely and pointy. They're bamboo, but they're impregnated with a resin, and that makes them harder than, you know, a standard bamboo, because bamboo's quite soft, isn't it? So these are slightly harder than for example, like the Chowgu bamboo, and that's why I went for these in the end, because I just thought they're going to be more resilient, aren't they? And I absolutely love them. They swivel in the cords here. Interchangeable set, and they're fantastic. I love them. I'm really, really glad I bought these, so I would definitely recommend them. There we go.
Cool. It's time for us to go out on our final new adventure of the season. So today, well, it's an epic story of 1,000 years of wonderful history, and it culminates in a visit from Winston Churchill and King George VI. Sadly, not to the actual podcast filming.
No, that would be miraculous.
Because that really would be miraculous. So I think let's talk more action, and let's head off as we discover the countdown to D-Day.
Welcome to the heart of Yorkshire and this gorgeous Augustinian priory.
It was founded in 1130, and for 400 years it was a place of peace and tranquility.
And in 1539, it closed its doors thanks to Henry VIII's thirst for wives.
But this little priory story was only just beginning, because 400 years later,
It would find itself at the heart of the Allies' preparations for D-Day. Welcome to Kirkham Priory, and these are the new adventures of the Bakery Bears. Let me tell you folks, this is a truly wonderful place. And what I love about it the most, what separates it from any abbey or priory or religious house that we've ever visited, is its unique story.
But before we get to Winston Churchill and World War II, there's something else we need to discover.
Because the story of this priory is laced with 1,000 years of global history. So where do we begin?
Like so many tales, we begin with a couple in love. This is Walter Le Spec. He's the handsome man with that great big beard, and he was the High Sheriff of Yorkshire. Think Robin Hood and Sheriff of Nottingham, but instead of being in charge of the county of Nottingham, Walter was in charge of the county of Yorkshire. And when he was a young man, he married his sweetheart, and her name was Adelina. Now the year was 1115, and the married couple moved into this rather beautiful castle. Not too shabby, is it? This is Helmsley, and it's just up the road from Kirkham Priory. This was the perfect place for Walter to start a family, and within a year, Adelina gave birth to Walter's heir, his son. As Walter's son entered his teenage years, he became passionate about horses, specifically fast ones, and one day he came riding here at Kirkham.
Back then, the land was very similar to what you see behind me there. It was just open fields and farmland, so riding through here was just perfect.
As he pushed his horse on and on, the rough ground made it harder to keep his steed under control, and disaster struck. The horse clipped his foot on a stone cross and threw Walter's only son, who fell to his death.
Walter and Adelina were understandably inconsolable, and they wanted to do something to remember what would turn out to be their only child. So they spoke to Walter's uncle William, and he suggested opening a priory near to the site where the accident had happened. That way they'd be turning something unbelievably tragic into something wonderfully good.
Within 18 months of their son's death, Kirkham Priory opened its doors for the first time. Whilst the buildings, which we will of course explore, are similar to that of a monastery, this was a house with a difference. You see, unlike Fountains Abbey or Revo Abbey, Kirkham was not populated by monks. The men who lived here were called canons. There were 16 in total, and they were managed by a prior. But instead of staying within their priory precinct to pray or write religious books, the canons of Kirkham Priory did something a little bit different.
Like all religious houses, they would meet here every week in the chapter house to decide who needed to do what. But the canons' daily lives involved getting out of here and getting out into the towns and villages that surrounded their community. These men were the precursors to the priests and the vicars that work in the Christian church today.
We actually know the name of every man who sat within this room as prior. But who was the first? Walter Le Spec's Uncle William, of course. Though this building is of course now ruined, the remains that we see show it was a very large room with carved arches and benches all around the side walls, of which only the bases now remain. It was most probably covered in a single-span roof with stone-ribbed vaulting. But for 400 years, every week, 17 men would sit in here and discuss the lives and the needs of their community.
But of course, they needed much more than just a meeting room. They needed kitchens and bedrooms and a church and so much more. So let's see what we can find.
These are the moments on any visit that I just love. we're walking in the footsteps of so many who have gone before us. What I love so much about the canons who worked here is how they lived their daily lives. These men ran schools, hospitals and homes for the poor, as well as acting as their community's priest. Unlike so many other religious houses, they also accepted women in their number, canonesses. They all, of course, met daily for services, and they did that right here. I'm walking now straight down the nave of the Priory Church. Now, this was not just the heart of the community here at Kirkham, but it was also, in effect, the parish church of the surrounding towns and villages too. The beauty of what we're looking at Kirkham is, other than general upkeep over the 400 years it was in service, this is the building Walter Le Spec conceived and paid for. The surviving details show that it had arcades of 8 bays and was richly decorated with carved capitals and pointed lancet windows. In size and style, it would have looked similar to Rievaulx or Fountains Abbey, but with much more lavish decoration. This church was one of the most architecturally impressive buildings in the north of England. And as we leave the church behind us here, we walk out into the Priory cloister. It's probably the most communal place in any monastery or priory, and it would have been no different here at Kirkham. This square would have been covered over the walkways around the side, and it linked all the main buildings within the priory. The 4 alleys which squared off a central garden linked all the main buildings within the priory precinct. The alley roofs were supported on open arches, which were embellished with animal and figure sculptures. Now, these 2 arches were very important. Contained within were basins where the canons would wash their hands before entering the dining room. And immediately to the left of the basins was this ornate doorway into that dining room, which within any monastery is called a refectory. As we turn away from that doorway, we are now walking up one of the previously covered alleys. Whilst these areas would have been busy with people coming and going, silence was actually observed when you were walking through the cloister. In front of us, we see the stepped entrance into the Priory's chapter house, which we explored earlier. And looking across this northern alley, you would have found canons at work behind wooden desks. As we finally now look across the cloister, we see an entrance, and a very ornate one at that. It was a grand archway which would have housed a huge oak door, and that was into the Priory's more public area, its west range. But I think it's time for a little rest, so just off the cloister, I found the perfect spot for us to have a little knit. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think I can make it official. This is my favourite knitting spot of the whole series. I had a good chat with the lady on the sites like this. They're run by English Heritage. That's an organisation that exists all the way across the UK, and they look after lots of castles and abbeys and all sorts. And she's a lovely lady. I had a really good chat, and she said that loads of people come here and they just sit and they just contemplate, and I can totally see why. I've never been anywhere quite like this before. And do you know what? I think that's what makes every one of the priories and the abbeys and the religious places that we go to, that's what makes them unique, because they all have a totally unique character whilst being built on exactly the same type of layout. And you know how interesting that all links directly to the Romans, because the Romans obviously, with Constantine, as we covered earlier on in this series, they Christianized certainly the Western world, and in the process of doing that, they implanted an awful lot of their architecture onto how these places were built. We've just been in the cloister, which is just up there, and that sort of cloister layout all stems from Roman villas. Well,
I've never been anywhere quite so tranquil. I can hear water in the background. The place it reminds me of is Finkel. And obviously Finkel came top of our list last year. Now, the challenge that we've got here is it's quite a challenging place to get to. Now, it's been a lovely journey for me today because I got totally lost, and along the way, you know, today is, of course, the last one in this season of New Adventures. And we started out this season of New Adventures with me going on a walk to my grandma's. Well, my other grandma lived not 5 miles from here, and I didn't realise that. And the one thing I didn't anticipate today was that I would end up getting lost and driving past her house. So that was just lovely. And it feels like a lovely way to bookend what's been the most wonderful season of adventures. Neil, you know, I have to give this a score for knitability. And there are loads of benches like this, scattered all around. There's also lots of wall to sit on. There's also lots of grassy areas. I'm not far from a really busy road, but I can't hear it. When you put the water in, when you consider that it's now October and it's slightly chilly, but it's not because it's sheltered. Folks, there's only one thing I can possibly do, and that's give a 10. I wish I had a scorecard. Seriously, it feels wrong doing that without Kay here to either talk me down or to agree and definitely go for it. But I know, given how much she loved Finkel, and given how similar and how tranquil this place is, it would be the perfect place for knitting, for drawing, for reading, for painting, or coming and playing with your kids, if you're me. Seriously, this place can't be bettered, and I only wish it was a little bit closer to home. Now, it's enough knitting. I could sit here all day knitting, but we have so much more to discover.
Like who lived in this rather beautiful house? And what brought Winston Churchill here on the eve of D-Day?
So make sure you come back for part 2. We'll see you later in the show.
What a beautiful place.
Lovely.
Oh my goodness, it is so reminiscent of Finkel, where we visited in season 1. And I would say it's probably a bit better than Finkel. But you know, there's still...
Location's beautiful.
It's just gorgeous. And I think what surprised me the most, and I had words with my mum about this, is, you know, my gran lived just down the road, literally 5 miles down the road, so why did we never go there? We went to Fountains Abbey, which was like 40 miles in totally the opposite direction to where we lived.
Just not as well known, I would say.
Bonkers. I think perhaps it's another example of places when they end up being close to other lovely places don't get the attention they deserve. And Kirkham Priory is literally a stone's throw from Castle Howard. So, you know, that's probably the reason why people tend to just blast straight past it on their, you know, day out to either Castle Howard or, of course, Scarborough.
Yeah.
Which is the, you know, the really big seaside resort. But, well, no, I can't say too much, but we'll be visiting Scarborough in season 3 of New Adventures.
Really? Are we really? I've always quite fancied staying in the big hotel there. There's a big hotel.
The Futurist.
What?
No.
The Futurist?
That's the theatre.
It's like the big traditional hotel on the seafront. It's where all the Victorians would have stayed back in the day.
Well, we'll go and scout it out.
It still looks it's got that grand look inside. I've always wanted to stay there. Maybe we will.
We shall scout it out. Scout it out in season 3 of New Adventures. We're, of course, coming back later on in the show for part 2. Oh, yes. You'll get to join me for lunch. And it's very exciting because this place was famous for fish. So what better lunch to have than sushi? But now it's time for us to find out, and I've got something off my needles too, but we'll start with Kay. Kay Jones, what's off your needles?
I've got a few things.
You do too.
Well, I'm going to start with something that, to be honest, is a bit disappointing, and it's not finished, but it's not going to get finished. So I just...
But it was fun. In the moment...
In the moment, I'm just gonna...
Should have used them as tree decorations.
Yeah. Do you remember the little hexagons? It's the Polygon Blanket by Tin Can Knits. And I did them in fingering weight, and I was really excited, and oh, it was so fun, and it absolutely is fun to knit these. And I blocked them all. This is 4 of them here. I blocked them so you can see how lovely and pretty. I mean, I might still hang these ones on the tree, who knows. When I tried to sew them together, it just all went wrong. I don't know if it's the fact that I used fingering weight, so they're all slightly different thicknesses, aren't they? And not, you know, the pattern was designed for a consistent yarn just in a load of different colours. But it just was looking rubbish. There's no other word for it, and I don't know really. And I think I was just sewing them together as I thought I should sew them together, but I don't know if you can see. If I hold it sideways, I don't know if you can see, but here it like bulges out here. It does, take my word for it. It bulges out here at the point where you join the sort of 3 areas, the 3 hexagons. It doesn't lay flat, is what I'm trying to say. You can probably see there. It's just not lying flat. And I thought, well, maybe that was a fluke. I'll do another one. And that one, it's a little bit flatter, but it's still not lying flat. And I suppose I could reblock it, but I just, at that point, I was like, this is just too much of a faff, and it's causing me stress. And I said to Dan, it's just not worth it, is it really? I think it was my mistake for not using the yarn in the pattern, but I just couldn't get these points to line up properly. Can you see this join here? They're not joining in the centre. They're like a bit skew whiff, and I think that's what's throwing it off. You know, the pattern just, all it says is to whip stitch the hexagons together. It doesn't give you any other directions, and I did actually even look on their website and I couldn't find anything, sadly. So I just thought, well, I'm not gonna pursue this any further. So I got that much. I just, you know, as I said before, I enjoy the detail, and I like to get a really lovely finish, and I just didn't feel confident that I could get a finish that I was happy with this. So this will not be getting any further than this, but do you know what? I had fun knitting them.
So that's all that matters.
So
and let's hang those others.
Yeah, these ones I can just hang on the tree, and that'll be fine, won't it? Little colourful snowflakes. So that's that, basically. I just wanted to tell you that wasn't going any further.
What else is off your needles?
I finished a pair of socks.
Exciting.
How lovely. Oh, I love these. They're still a little bit damp because I only finished these yesterday, but I finished the second pair of Jemima socks. They're just so squishy, this fabric, and you know, it's been so lovely to see all the different versions that people are knitting up of the Jemima socks. This is the first pattern from the Miss Potter Sock Club that I designed. And if you want to see loads of different yarns, you know, if you haven't cast a pair on yet, if you go over to the chatter thread on the Ravelry group for the Miss Potter Sock Club, people have been posting loads of photos of finished socks. A lot of people have finished their pairs, but a lot of people are partway through. And the variety of yarns that people are using has been fantastic. There's literally every sort of type of yarn you could think of. And the pattern looks great in all of them. So I'm really, really pleased to see it, you know, in the flesh. And people are just so enjoying them. Some people have cast on their second pairs of them, which is just fantastic. You know, I'm just so thrilled that you've enjoyed them that much that you've cast on another pair. So these I knit in Knit Picks Felici. This is the Steamer Trunk colourway. There's the yarn. And I used a River Knits Mini again for the heels and toes, and this colour's showing up much better this time, in this beautiful teal, which was to match Newt Scamander's coat in the first film. And I thought that these colours looked like his suitcase. So these will be for Bryony for her birthday. She can wear them to the new film that's out kind of mid-November, because that's her little birthday treat. We're postponing it so that we can take her to the cinema with a few of her friends. And they're all done. And I just, you know, I really, really enjoyed knitting these socks. I really loved working with the Felici. I think it just goes to show really that even if you've had a slightly negative experience with a yarn, because it was a few years ago, I just didn't like the kind of dye spots that were through it. I think it's always worth maybe having another go, because maybe they've changed their processes slightly. Admittedly, this is only one pair and I might have just been lucky, but I just love them. I just really, really love them. And I just love how they look. And they don't match, and I really love that they don't match. I think they just look more interesting. Look, not matching.
I do.
You don't?
I like mine matched to perfection.
Well, we like them unmatched, don't we?
Go for it.
Yes. Dan Jones, what's off your needles?
I finished.
Yay.
I've got a me hat. This is another platinum pattern, and I've knit loads of them.
Yeah.
And it's the one I'm happiest with the most. What's been so interesting is seeing how my gauge has changed on colour work. You know, it's gone from being huge to being more like what it should be.
It's much better. We haven't blocked this yet either, because you only finished this last night.
Yes.
So this is unblocked. I think it's pretty good. What do you think?
I'm really happy,
I
actually.
think it looks great.
What concerned me, and still does slightly, and this is why I need to pick the right next pattern now, because I want to do something just slightly more complex in the weight that I'll be doing the colour work on the sole. So I'll do another hat, and I'll do it in the weight, and actually I should do it in the yarn
I'm
too.
going to say I could order you a couple of balls.
So let's pick a pattern.
Yeah, I'll do that for you this afternoon.
Great. What I'm sort of getting at, what's bothered me is if you see at the bottom, it's not quite right. It's okay, it's not quite right, but then it becomes better and better and better the more I do it. Of course it does. It's called practice, isn't it? As a whole, it's the best one by miles.
Yeah, I'd say so.
So yeah, and I really do love this pattern. This is most definitely, you know, it is, and it's thanks to this pattern that I'm knitting these. Because, you know, just like Bankhead Speargrass, I've gone, mon ami, like this designer, that this pattern's flowing, so I'll do the next thing that everyone seems to have knit and really enjoyed, so Prairie Socks. And then, of course, I'll be casting on some Jemima socks, which better be good. They certainly look good, but will the pattern have that flow, that rhythm, that...
Has it?
Does it? No, you tell me. You've just finished the pair. Does it?
I would say yes.
So it has a rhythm.
It certainly
flows.
has. Well, yes, I hope so.
I like patterns that you can dance to the stitch pattern.
Oh, honestly. And this hat has been stolen by my mum. Mum, your hat's ready. I just
Well,
need
it
to
isn't
give it a
because
wash.
it's not her birthday yet. So
No, it's a birthday at the beginning of December. My mum will be 82 at the beginning of December. So she really loved this hat. She actually rang me up and said, can I have that hat? So Mum, you can have this hat. I'll give it a wash and a soak and you can have this for your birthday.
Superb.
Yeah. I have finished Dan's gloves.
Excellent. You need a blocker.
Were you hoping that I was going to say that?
I was.
Haha.
Because now I can wear them. If it wasn't going to be 19 degrees today.
Well, I know what is going on. We had frost a few days ago and it was like 2 degrees in the morning.
But this morning, it's 8 degrees. It was cold.
Yeah.
You know, full on. And the temperature's just going to rise
It's just
and
going
rise
to
and
go
rise.
up. And it's going to be like 19 degrees this afternoon.
An 11-degree rise over
going
the course of
on?
the day.
Gloves are finished. Yay!
Can we put them on the blockers?
Yeah, but look at this little finger. It reminds me of C-3PO. Does anybody know why?
With his arm.
With his red arm. I love that happened. So yes, please do put them on. I knit these in Regia Design Line by Kristen Nicholas. Colourway is 03314. Something odd happened with this yarn. This is the 2 leftover balls I had. Can you see the difference in the size? And I thought, at first I panicked. I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? I've knit one bigger than the other. So I went and weighed the gloves and they both weighed exactly the same. They're 36 grams each. So I thought, phew, thank goodness. And then I weighed the leftover balls. One of them's 8 grams, the other is 11 grams. So that's 3 grams difference. But not only that, if you add up, 36 plus 8 is 41.
Okay.
So one of the balls was only 41 grams and the other ball was only 44 grams. 44 grams. I feel a bit diddled that, you know, the starters, they weren't 50 grams each, they were a bit short of 50 grams. And also that there was a 3 gram discrepancy. But anyway, I had enough. That's all that matters really, isn't it, at the end of the day? So yeah, look, all done. Oh, and are they okay?
Yeah.
You see, I was worried that I'd knit some of them a bit long, but I think they're okay, aren't they?
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah.
They're great.
And I used the pattern from the Anne Budd book that I've shown before, and it was brilliant, really good. And I've now written out my own sort of pattern, my cheat sheet pattern, so I know that if I want to knit them again for you, I can just work through my own sort of pattern from it.
And a glove tutorial series is coming in January.
Yes, it will be coming. It will be coming. I finished Goffy's blanket.
Oh.
I posted a picture of this on Instagram last night with Goffy sat on top of it. I say Goffy, it was Goffy 2 that was sat on top of it. Goffy 2 is a younger version. It's exactly the same as Goffy 1, but she's not been around as much. I got her from eBay probably maybe 5 years ago now, something like that. I spotted her on eBay because Goffy, if you don't know, is a giraffe that was made by the Happy Horse company. It's called Happy Horse. So this is for Goffy 2. Yay! Oh, it's that way up. Not that it makes a difference, but that's the way I knit it. Isn't it sweet? Just lovely tiny little mitered squares. They're 21 stitches each, the little squares, and I used 2.5mm needle. And then I bordered it, if you can hold up so you can see the lovely border. Can you see it's kind of like a pale minty green with speckles. This was leftovers from my promenade socks that I knit. And it's Kelly Lay's yarn, Lay Family yarn, and it's New Beginnings. And I just thought the colour was kind of reminiscent of Goffy with the pale minty colour. And I did sort of block it because it was a bit skew with the shape. So I didn't want to completely immerse it in water just because of all the different colours that are in there, just in case any of them slightly ran. So I just laid it out, I pinned it square or rectangular, and then I just kind of spritzed it all over with water, patted it all down to get the water, you know, into the fibres, and just left it for a day, and I think it's okay. It's not perfectly square, but it's good enough for Goffy. So that will go away for Christmas.
So, for the final time this year, let's go back on our new adventure and finish off season 2.
Welcome back to Kirkham Priory. This is the Prior's house. Now, the Prior was of course the man who sat in charge, sat above the 16 canons who lived and worked here. And whilst the canons would go off out into the community, serving the religious needs of all the people in the surrounding area, it was the Prior's job to stay here, manage the Priory and make sure it made enough money to stay open.
Thanks to the superb bookkeeping and history logging of monastic houses like this, we know the name of every man who lived in this house, from its first prior, Walter Lespeck's Uncle William in 1130, to its last prior, John Kildwick in 1518. Due to their responsibilities as prior, they were granted the privilege of privacy, living out their lives in these very rooms.
But whilst the Prior lived here in these really quite lovely rooms, he ate with the men that he managed in the refectory just over there.
And so we set off on a journey undertaken by every prior who ever lived at Kirkham, and it's one I bet they took with a spring in their step as they headed off here for lunch. Now, we're actually looking across the dining room on the floor level the canons would have sat together and eaten at, because the room sat on a vaulted undercroft. You can still see the remains of the piers which would have held up the refectory floor. At mealtimes, the canons would have sat at tables ranged around the side walls, with the prior seated on a raised platform at one end. In the south wall, which no longer remains, one of the canons would have stood and read aloud from a suitable book whilst the canons ate in silence. Kirkham was lucky though, because they had something very special. These, well, except they're not these because they're not there anymore. Archaeologists have discovered them, trust me, once. There was fish ponds here. Now, the Priory used the fish from the fish ponds, they ate them in the refectory, but they also sold them to the public. And all this talk of fish is making me hungry. I think it's time for some sushi.
Ladies and gentlemen, for the final time this series, I'm sitting down with you, and I thought it should be just you and I this time. Just like it was on episode 1. Well, I'm stunned. It's perfect. It's quiet. The road links are good. There's birds flying around, I can hear water. There's a train track over there, so every so often you hear a train go by. Lots of picnic tables. You're a bit stuck if you haven't brought a picnic, and you'll be pleased to know, if you remember in episode 1 of this season of New Adventures, I think all I had with me, did I have a falafel? I think I did. Well, today I thought, because of the cannon's links to fish, because of the fish ponds, which I haven't really managed to find. I found the site where they were, but I was hoping I'd actually find them. I thought the perfect choice was sushi. And whilst the cannons back then probably would not have had sushi, in fact, well, no, maybe they did. Maybe they did have raw fish. I'm guessing that they most probably didn't, but it is just the perfect choice. So, of course, we need a bit of wasabi. Now, in memory of Kay, I think that I am sat on some wet stones. So, I've come prepared. That's the trick. I think when you go anywhere, you have to make sure that you're prepared. So what I have here is a lovely raincoat. And if I sit on my raincoat, that should keep me nice and dry. It's perfect. Now, also as well, I always struggle to get this out. Do you have sushi? And this is the pickled stuff, isn't it? You always need like an implement to get it out, but I have come equipped with a fork. Kay never has these bits, but I really like them. And as Nana Wendy, as my mum always says, it's really important to eat something pickled. I don't just have sushi. Oh no. Here, let's try a bit of sushi. Mmm. Oh, that's really nice. It's smoked salmon in that. That's delicious. I've decided to come and actually have my lunch in the Prior's lodgings. And it is the perfect spot, I think, actually, if you're in charge of this place, because it's set up quite high and I can see right across the whole site, which is just cool. And also as well, how amazing to think that, you know, we know the names of all the Priors who lived in this house, but, you know, I'd love to go back in time and show one of them then what happened in the ensuing years. Of course, we haven't told you about that yet. That's coming up in just a moment. But it's just down there. I can see the areas where all the D-Day training was done. And you can see why they picked it. Prior to coming here, I couldn't really work out why you would choose, just thinking back to all the monasteries and priories and different places that, you know, we visited, I couldn't really work out why you choose a priory to train for D-Day landings. But there's so much water. It's just a river, but, you know, totally see why they used it. But I don't just have sushi. Oh no. I also have one of my favourites, a samosa. Now, did Kate get vegetable? Yes, she did. It's one of my favourite things, actually. I absolutely adore samosas. I'm sitting here enjoying my picnic, and you would be a bit stuck if you hadn't brought something. Because the shop does have you know, the odd little thing, but it doesn't have sandwiches or anything. They've got crisps. So, you know, it would be a pretty shocking picnic if you bought it, if you tried to buy it here. So you have to come prepared. So it probably does need to lose a mark for that. And also, there's no restaurants nearby. There's no places where you could go and travel away and have something. So it probably loses another mark for that. So I'm thinking, for picnicability, it gets an 8. But it's an absolutely stonking, superb 8, because I really couldn't pick a nicer place to sit and have my lunch. What about interestability? Well, it is superb. It's different to other abbeys that I've been to because it's much more up and down. Normally when you go to places like Fountains Abbey, it's quite flat and everything's set out on a level. But here there's contours in the land, so things are built up, things are lower down, so it makes it very interesting on the eye. What I also love is they've got loads and loads of what look like brand new plaques telling you about all the areas that you're going to. So even if you didn't buy the guidebook, you'd be able to walk around, read the plaques and understand what was going on here. And then when you add in the fact that you've got the religious element of the history, you've got the great story about Walter and his poor son who died, who, you know, resulted in this wonderful place being built. You then throw in Winston Churchill and George VI, who we're going to speak about in just a moment, who visited just down there. He's going to get it out again, folks. It's his 10 card. It's a 10 from Len. Oh, poor Len's not there anymore. Such a shame. I don't think it's the same. Do you? Because he did Dancing with the Stars as well, didn't he? I certainly don't think it's the same on Strictly. I miss Len. But it's a 10 from me. So we have a score for our final visit of the season. And it's 28. Oh my goodness. That puts it in the top 3. And really, there's no arguing with that. The places that we visited, I think because we're just pushing out that little bit further and we're trying places that we previously have just never even considered. It's just wonderful. I would say though, and you know, it'd be interesting to get Kay's opinion on this, but I would say that out of all the places that we've been to over the last, it was 7 visits first season, 8 visits this season. So far, definitely my top 3 are Finkel from season 1, Aidan, and here. It's just superb. So if you get the opportunity to come to Kirkham Priory, it's not far from York, not far from Scarborough, straight off the A64, I strongly advise you to do so. Because the other thing is, I've had this place to myself today, and that makes me happy because I've just been able to just stroll around and it be unlike any visit I think I've ever had, because normally wherever we go, we see somebody. But I've not seen a soul, apart from that fly who's decided to come and attack me, but I think he's gone now. He's after my food. That's just not fair. Folks, in summary, superb place, great score, wonderful way to end the season, but we need to find out, how is this place linked to World War II?
The doors of Kirkham Priory shut forever in 1538 thanks to Henry VIII's dissolution of the monasteries. This wonderful Gothic gatehouse was actually a much later addition to the Priory buildings, having been added 200 years after the original Priory was finished. While acting as a decorative scheme, it also clearly declared to the outside world the association of the Priory with rich and powerful families. You have to remember that throughout the time this building was in use, the outside world could be increasingly dangerous. From the Wars of the Roses to marauding Scottish armies, the gatehouse was the first line of defence. But Henry VIII closed its doors forever, and you can only imagine the effect this must have had on the community they had supported as schools and hospitals closed. For 400 years, the site lay dormant, with local landowners stealing stone to build their grand mansions.
But in 1944, it was time for Kirkham Priory to see a whole new type of action. General Percy Hobart of the British Army was looking for a place to test some of his newest inventions.
This was the critical moment of World War II. General Hobart knew the immense challenges the Allies would face storming the beaches on D-Day, so he created a range of tanks, and they were nicknamed Hobart's Funnies. They were designed to lead the charge in getting a foothold on the beaches of northern France, held by Hitler's army. They needed the perfect place to test them, and they selected right here at Kirkham. the 79th Armoured Division moved in, and if you had been here in May 1944, you would have seen minesweepers, carpet layers, and even amphibious tanks sweeping across the countryside. The ruins of the abbey were perfect for troop training too, so nets were thrown over the walls and drills were run. This, General Hobart thought, was exactly the type of landscape the Allied soldiers would encounter in the bombed-out towns of northern France.
And this secret Allied base was so important, it was even visited by Winston Churchill and King George VI himself. Now, only one picture remains of that visit because this site was so secret. The picture was actually taken by a local resident who only recently came forward. They snapped a photograph of Winston Churchill talking to their grandfather.
On June the 6th, 1944, Hobart's funnies left their secret base here at Kirkham. They led the charge at 3 of the D-Day beaches with great success. 70 years later, most armies use specialist armoured vehicles that wouldn't have looked out of place in Hobart's ragtag armada of bizarre creations. The funnies, tested right here at Kirkham Priory, were no joke at all.
So that's it. Another new adventure's over, and so is the series.
From the Vikings' invasion of York to the story of Beatrix Potter at Lowther Castle, and so many more besides.
This series, we visited some of the most wonderful places that we've ever been to, but we aren't stopping yet. In fact, we're only just getting started. Because next year, folks, we will be back with 8 brand new adventures, and they're going to be our greatest yet. From the lost medieval village of Warren Percy to the might of Scarborough Castle, and so many more amazing places in between. Yes, on the 29th of March 2019, set your calendars now, we shall return for what will be our greatest season yet. We'll see you then for more new adventures of the Bakery Bears.
That's it. Oh my goodness. With a tinge
Of sadness.
but also it's funny. You know, I suppose it's like New Year's.
Yeah.
Because you're sort of ending something but beginning something new. But you know, let's focus on the ending something first of all, because it was just brilliant, the place. And you know, I must take you guys, because you'll really love it. It is such a wonderful place. You know, I touched on this in the episode you've just watched, but all these places have their own unique, different feel. It was a really great day because, yes, it was overcast, and
That can be good for filming, though, I think.
Well-
so you're not getting that bright, direct.
yeah, absolutely. And also, because it was overcast, the wind wasn't that choppy, so it made it so serene and so unbelievably lovely.
I really like to go.
Absolutely, we must. And you know, fitting that it just didn't quite knock Aidan off the top.
Yeah.
28 points it got,
Oh, right.
and Aidan got 29 points.
Ah, right. Okay.
The reason why, and I think it was just
That's
that
close, though.
it is. It's really close. The reason why I had to knock more off, you know, I knocked an extra one off because, you know, if you didn't go with a picnic, if you didn't go really prepared, you would be absolutely stuck.
Yeah, you'd go hungry.
You would go hungry. But if you get the opportunity to go, you must go. Now, the every one of this series and every one of the last series, we do a director's cut. It's our gold edition, and it's available to our gold and platinum patrons. And that cut is available right now. And if you're wanting to enjoy new adventures again and again, you can go to page 30 of issue 14 of Knitability, and all the episodes from season 1 and season 2 are linked there. So throughout the period of time that we're not going on new adventures, because we're back next March, and yes, we'll be going to Scarborough, we'll be going to the deserted medieval village of Warren
Percy.
Yes.
Oh, right.
Yes. How exciting.
I have been there, but it was donkeys years ago.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
I'm impressed that you've been.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to be going there.
Literally, it must be. How old am I?
Let's not discuss that.
No, it's 20 years ago plus.
Right. So next March, we should be back. But in the meantime, if you want to enjoy our director's cuts, page 30, issue 14 of Knitability, and they're all there and they're linked. Now begins, though, the preparations for some very exciting things. We're saying nothing about what's happening next episode, because some of you may be wondering if the Pudding Club's finished. And if New Adventures has finished, what precisely is going to be going on in episode 111?
111.
111. Well, in 111, 112, 113 and 114, for a 4-episode run, we're doing something very, very special. So I'll say nothing more other than be there. But this period
It's fun.
It's very fun.
Very fun.
This period of time is where we start to plan the Bakery Bears Advent Calendar.
We do.
Oh yes, I know it's naughty to even discuss it, but because of course it's not Christmas yet.
Look, I've been listening to Christmas music this week.
But now is the time. Our Advent Calendar has, ever since we started it 4 years ago, it's grown every year. Every year we've done more and pushed out further, and this year the theme for it is just we're so excited about the theme. And production meetings begin next week.
Yep.
As insisted upon by
me.
Kay.
Yep. Cracking the whip.
Do it, baby.
I might make some scones for the meeting. If you're lucky.
Even better. It's time for the Endy Bits.
Endy Bits.
Neil, before you stop talking, let me just quickly say the Climb Every Mountain Cow continues. And I need to sort myself out and do a proper update on where we're at. So I will get on the case.
There's masses.
Yeah,
masses
I know.
And masses and masses.
So any runner or walker, it's never too late to join. Any runner or walker, if you go to the thread in our Ravelry group, it tells you exactly what you need to do. You can get involved. And of course, for patrons, you can get involved by filling your rucksack.
Yep.
And lots of people have already filled their rucksacks.
Yeah.
You can get involved by filling your rucksack. And again, the thread is there on Ravelry. But there's also the
Philosopher's Cowl knit along is still ongoing until Halloween. So I will close the thread on the 1st of November. We've got quite a lot of finished cowls now in that thread, in the FO thread. But just remember, you don't need to finish it. So if you get to the 30th of October and you've still not finished it, just go along and pop a photo in the FO thread of your progress. You will qualify for the prize. And I actually brought the prize with me again, just to remind you, because I haven't shown it for a little while. And there's actually a little addition to the prize. So it's the skein of piggy yarns. That I've knit some socks in this. The 9 3/4 colourway in this fabulous base, which is Luxe Sock. It's a BFL cashmere nylon base. And honestly, it's one of the nicest sock yarns I have ever knit with. It's fantastic. The winner will also get a little Harry Potter, is it Fantastic Beasts? Yes. Fantastic Beasts Lego, which is exciting, a little mystery one. And then the lovely Heather, it's Heather Haynes, who designed the Stash Buster shawl, and she's actually got a new one coming out soon, which is an asymmetrical version of the Stash Buster. She sent me some prizes for the podcast, and there's some yarn, and then she also sent a bunch of the Stash Buster patterns that are laminated. And she said, just give them out with prizes. So how brilliant is that? So every time now until my little supply runs out, I'm going to be adding in one of Heather's patterns into the prizes. So I just think that's just a lovely thing, isn't it? I prefer a written pattern, if I'm honest. And the fact that this is laminated, I think is brilliant. So that's the little prize package.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's that.
You bought some yarn.
I did, I've just got a couple of things.
Cool.
Can you remember last time I said that I'd bought some Mad Tosh?
Yeah.
It's the Twist Light.
Very nice.
I'd ordered it from Loop in London because I'd never tried this base. It's 75/25 merino nylon, but it's 420 yards. So it's like it's 384 metres so it's slightly thicker I think,
What's
than
this
your
for?
average. Well, I got this. The colour I got was Grace Notes. And it's this lovely grey with these little speckly pops of colour. You can see that everywhere, these little specks. And this was a possibility for the sock design that I'm working on as the start of the Platinum collection
The
for
2019 Platinum collection.
However, I've gone with a different yarn for that.
So what are you going to use that for?
Well, I'm going to knit socks with it.
Oh.
And I actually thought of knitting socks for you. Why? What did you want?
Nothing. I thought I might knit socks for you with it.
Oh, really? Oh, well, you can use it.
Well, should I? I think I should.
Well, if you want to.
Could I knit the
use...
Jemima socks in there?
Yeah, absolutely.
And would it be okay?
They'd be lovely.
Well, I'll
They'd
knit
be
with those.
beautiful, yeah.
Great.
It's got some great speckles. The thing I will tell you, because I was slightly disappointed with this is an expensive skein of yarn. I think it was £22, something like that. And then with postage, I think it might have been £26, £27. That's an expensive skein of yarn for me. And
Expensive skein of yarn for anyone.
it's an expensive skein of yarn. And it arrived and the packaging was fine. It was in a brown paper bag, but it was folded over like this for starters. So I was like, wasn't keen on that. So I undid it. And it's quite pilly already. I don't know whether you can actually see. You probably, it might not be
It's been on
showing
the shelf,
up.
hasn't it? And been pulled in and out.
Well, this is my theory. I obviously don't know, but I know that I've only been to Loop once, and it was years ago, so I don't know if it's still the case, but I think it is. Their stock is kept in cubes, and my experience of it is that they're jammed into there. There's a lot in there, and I remember I was looking for some particular colours, and I had to pull out the entire cube to get, to find the colour that I was looking for. And to me, it looks like it's been pushed in and pulled out and pushed in and pulled out. Do you know what I mean? And it's a bit pilly on here, and I'm sure the yarn underneath, here where, it looks okay, but it's just a bit pilly. And I just find that a bit disappointing, really. And, to the point of the couple of areas, there were actual pills I could pick off.
It's not very good.
No, I wasn't thrilled with that, if I'm honest. And it will put me off from buying. I don't buy a lot from Loop because, anyway, I don't need to go into it any more than that. So, but I love the colour, and I love the yarn looks lovely. So that's that one. And then I pre-ordered from Helen at Giddy Yarns. She did a Halloween sort of mystery thing, and you could choose, I think there was 4 Halloween sort of films that you could choose, and you got a mystery skein which was self-striping, and one of the choices was Jaws. Now, although I wouldn't consider Jaws to be a Halloween film,
It could be.
it's kind of a
'Cause
scary.
it's a monster.
It's a scary film, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I don't. You know what I mean?
Yes, it is.
I don't think it's that scary, but it's.
Well, you're wrong. You're wrong. It's a scary film.
I think just because I've seen it so much, I don't consider it scary anymore. But I think if you were watching it for the first time, it probably is quite scary, isn't it?
I still think it's scary now. So.
All right, okay. All right then. So I ordered this skein, and it's called We're Gonna Need a Bigger Boat. I mean, how fun is that? A self-striping, 75-25, 425 metres. And look, it's got the red of the blood and the grey of the shark and 2 shades of blue for the ocean, and then like a natural colour. That's just so fun, isn't it? I love that. I can't wait to knit those. They'll be, hopefully for me, if I can manage to keep them. I tend to give all my socks to Bryony, but I will try and keep these ones. And I'll probably just put in like a natural coloured heel in those. So I love that. I think it's great fun. And do you know the dyers that spend the time making these gobstopper balls? I absolutely hold my hands up to you and applaud you, because this is going to take some time. And I think it looks fantastic, it's brilliant, and it means you can start knitting straight away. So I am all for it, that I don't have to wind it. But well done really to the dyers that do this. I think it's just so fantastic. So thank you, Helen, for that one. Love it.
Done.
I am done.
Excellent. So thank you so much for watching. The end of our seasons of Pudding Club and New Adventures, and the beginning. Now it's time for you to get excited about what's to come next.
Ooh.
So come back next episode for the start of some fun and games. There is a score to settle, and it will be settled. Yes. All the usual is going on in between now and our next show in 2 weeks. We've got the crochet tutorial going on. Kay's got her thrummed mitten tutorial going on, and there's all sorts happening. There'll be a new search for a perfect cup of tea, and some more of my tune to the centre of the yoke. There's all sorts going on over the next 2 weeks. But then, of course, we'll be back in 2 weeks for episode 111. So thank you so much for watching.
Thank you, everybody.
And we'll see you then.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Who's it sitting and knitting? It's Dan and Kay, the bakery bears. Enthusiasm's not quitting for Dan and Kay, the bakery bears. They'll take you to fabulous places of which their favorites they'll share. You better buy a pattern and knit yourself a bakery bear. You'll find yourself in a castle while watching the bakery bears. It never feels like a hassle to sit and watch the bakery bears. What's on your shelf or what's in